Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Season 2, Episode 9 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled Project Daedalus. And I gotta say, from right out of the gate, this was a really intriguing episode, and it was one that I went into it with not very much expectations, other than what we saw in the preview for the episode attached to the previous, the little clips and everything like that of Ariam throwing down and all that kind of stuff, already suspecting that she was indeed the saboteur on board the Discovery, and it wasn't Ash Tyler, as the crew was led to believe, and all that kind of stuff, because of the three glowing dots in her eyes, all of the symbol for Brainiac, the DC Comics Superman villain, and everything like that. I thought it was only a matter of time until she did rear her ugly head, and we already got the tip of the hat, as per the preview for this episode attached to the previous, that was inevitably going to be coming. And this coming all on the coattails of, revisiting Talos 4 and seeing the reunification of Captain Pike and Vina and Spock and his half-sister and Michael Burnham, the Telosians, all that kind of stuff, which was just gangbusters and spectacular and all kinds of awesome sauce as far as I was concerned. So to come off of that, I was hoping we wouldn't feel a lull. And I certainly didn't. I was certainly engaged from the word go, because we get to learn that much more about the Ariam character. Now, some could argue that it's kind of too little too late, for that emotional impact toward the end when she's effectively has to be sacrificed because of the control that this control AI element has over her, for this nefarious purpose of domineering all and exterminating all life. I think we just saw something like that in the Orville, maybe a two-parter, which was an awesome two-parter. But it's really interesting how things got from point A to point B to point C along the course of this episode, where we really get to finally learn that much more about Ariam. Is she a robot? No, she's cybernetically enhanced, and or robot, as Tilly said, interjected at one point. But cybernetically enhanced, very much akin to something out of Ghost in the Shell. Like she must have like a positronic or cybernetic brain stem that houses her memories, and she can take or leave, delete files that she no longer desires having, and all that kind of stuff. And that is really intriguing. I almost wish they hadn't killed her off so we could learn that much more about it. If you have a familiarity with science fiction and things like Ghost in the Shell and the idea of AI and cybernetics and that kind of stuff, even just a vague sort of appreciation of it, I think you'll be able to wrap your mind around it. I certainly did, having that familiarity, but it's, again, kind of a too little too late thing, where like the emotional impact of this character's sacrifice that comes in the end is more so revolving around the empathy you have for the other characters who are suffering as a cause of it. Michael's breaking down, Tilly's breaking down, Detmer's breaking down, and Detmer can kind of relate, because she has cybernetic enhancements of her own. The crew is going to feel the impact of this. They're, one of their own that has been there from the word go has to be sacrificed because of this domineering control that is going to lead potentially to the extinction of all sentient life within the galaxy. Yeah, not small potatoes at all. It's very much a needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one sort of scenario, which goes back to classic Star Trek, Wrath of Khan and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting that Spock is here for this. There's almost a Wrath of Khan moment, as we had in the movie Wrath of Khan, between Kirk and Spock, when Spock saves the Enterprise by sacrificing himself, replete with, Burnham's hand on the glass as Ariam is pleading with her to let her go, to open the airlock. And it's not ultimately Burnham who pulls that lever, it's Commander Nhan, who I was like, I was kind of sad and really apprehensive that they were going to kill this character off, being a transplant much like Pike is aboard Discovery from the Enterprise. And she's such an awesome character, very much in the background. She hasn't been in the foreground that much, but of course she's got suspicions revolving around what it is Ariam has been doing on the bridge. And, again, along the course of point A to point B to point C, it's ultimately her who makes the judgment call, who gets rid of Ariam because of the threat she represents. And so there was that great characterization and drama, but like as far as being attached to the Ariam character, there really wasn't a whole lot of that. they do, somewhat successfully give you the impression that she is humanizing. She has very human origins. She's just like anyone else. She was, we see that video memory of she and her husband or fiance or whatever it is, on the beach, and they're going to be on their way home, and their shuttle doesn't make it, and all that kind of stuff. And it is actually something that really struck out to me as the uber fan of Ghost in the Shell, the franchise, as I am, because if you go back into the origins of the figurehead and leader of Section 9, this elite force of special agents, sort of cybersecurity and all that kind of stuff in the Ghost in the Shell franchise, in that framework, Motoko Kusanagi, aka the Major, in the second season of the standalone complex anime series, they delve a little bit more into her origins and how she came to be in a cybernetic chassis, akin to how Ariam is. And it was kind of a similar story. There was like a plane crash, and she was one of the only survivors, and had to be, sort of put into, hooked up to a cyber brain and put into a cybernetic chassis, and there was a learning curve involved and all that kind of stuff, and very similar, cut from similar cloth with what we have described to us of Ariam's origins. And so they do successfully, to a degree, manage to humanize her, but as I say, toward the end of the episode, when her sacrifice is the only way to avoid, all of this destruction, all this pending doom and gloom and everything like that, the eradication of all sentient beings in the galaxy, you're not really feeling the impact for the loss of the character, because we really haven't gotten to know the character. It's more so feeling what everyone else is feeling. As the tears begin to flow with Tilly and Burnham, as I say, I'm feeling empathetic toward them and sympathetic toward them as somebody who has suffered loss in real life. And so it was intriguing on that part, but it was also kind of intriguing the ramifications that they're tipping the hat with the title, Project Daedalus, because I'm not a connoisseur of mythology at all whatsoever, but mythology has always been something I've been interested in since like middle school, and I have read up on certain mythological elements from time to time. And if you go back to the Icarus story, Daedalus was Icarus's father, and the idea of the wax wings and flying too close to the sun as a means of trying to escape this labyrinthine prison and all that kind of stuff, Icarus flying too close to the sun and melting the wings and falling to his demise, but eventually his father Daedalus escaping this imprisonment and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you have stuff on display in this episode that are very much, falling in line with that mythological tale. You have the maze of mines surrounding this impending kingdom, if you will, in the form of Section 31's space station that has to be navigated, from point A to point B. And I did think some of the mines, like, like what it was, a chainsaw mine or whatever the hell they called it, the blade mines, it was a little bit ridiculous and a little bit needed suspension of disbelief, not quite scientific necessarily wholeheartedly, because they're talking about it boring into like the hull and of the Discovery, and like, really, are they really going to be able to successfully do that? But it did bear navigating, and that's again calling back to the idea of the labyrinth and Daedalus needing to escape. Daedalus himself being the orchestrator, the constructor of the wings, and the idea of utilizing that as a means of escaping such doom. Very much, it occurs to me, especially when we see the preview for the next episode of Star Trek Discovery, that whatever this Project Daedalus is, it must be directly tied to the Red Angels. For all we know, it could be very much that Project Daedalus is the creation of this suit, this apparatus that is worn by the Red Angels, that is utilized to manipulate time. And I wonder if the manipulation of time to, course correct or redirect the course of the timeline, which Spock insists is going to inevitably, lead to the destruction of all sentient life and whatever in the galaxy. I have to wonder if this is like a secondary sort of nature of whatever the actual project was. It could be something like a highly, radiation resistant suit that they could go in and like a person flying within the suit could go into a sun or something like that, and tentatively survive getting samples of, whatever, energy or actual, molten mass, whatever it is, and as a side effect, maybe, in trying to do this, because you go back to the original series of Star Trek, you go back to Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and there is this idea of time travel warping a vessel around the sun, slingshot around the sun effect, which leads to time travel, inadvertently in the original series, but then on purpose in Star Trek 4. And so, like, could this actually be Project Daedalus was, the creation of this device, this suit that one would wear for whatever purpose, and then in, utilizing it, they found, oh, there was this secondary idea that we could travel through time, and then maybe we could, course correct. Maybe there was kind of akin to my all-time favorite science fiction novel, The Time Machine. The traveler in The Time Machine in the original novel goes far-flung, way, way, way into the future, beyond the time he eventually returns to with the Eloi and the Morlocks and all that kind of stuff. And he sees what seems to be the dying out of the galaxy, of all life. There are dark, mysterious elements that he can't quite identify as well. But it does seem to bear that idea that maybe whatever this device was, whatever this apparatus was with the wings, and everything like that, perhaps whether it was actually created, manufactured with the purpose of stopping and course correcting this inevitable destruction, or if it was a side effect of that, by pure happenstance. It does bear the suggestion that maybe they witnessed firsthand this seemingly irrevocable future, where the destruction of all sentient life was going to happen, and whether this this suit, this Red Angel suit, was created strictly for the purposes of manipulating time and course correcting, or if it was, as I say, and suggest a secondhand thing, a sort of sideline thing that wasn't the original purpose, but now it's become the purpose, to utilize it to manipulate time and try to steer away from that inevitable destruction. It all remains to be seen, but I think it's really interesting how it all sort of plays into that idea, that Daedalus and Icarus idea. And I have to wonder if they're not already tipping the hat that the Icarus in the story is the Red Angel, whoever that Red Angel happens to be. Now, we do get a line of dialogue from Ariam just before she ends up exiting the series, being killed off, where she's like, "It's all about you, Michael. For whatever reason, they wanted me to kill you. They wanted me to take you out." Now, we already know, based on what they've told us in the previous episode, that she was pointedly saved by the Red Angel. The Red Angel gave the awareness to Spock, and he had witnessed what was effectively her death as a child. And so this Red Angel, whatever this entity, whatever this being is, if it's not in fact Michael Burnham herself, from some distant future time, it came back and it communicated with Spock as a child, this is where she is, she's going to die if you don't go save her, and they went and they effectively saved her. Which is an incursion on this timeline, for better or worse. It's arguable, remains to be seen whether you love the character or not. But I'll tell you, as I've already said about in previous, videos talking about this, people who call her a Mary Sue and seem to suggest that she's untouchable and she's invincible and she can do no wrong and she's always in the forefront and all this kind of stuff, she makes so many mistakes. And we saw once again her vulnerability on display full force, in not only her trying to extend the olive branch back to Spock and sort of reconcile with him, and that blowing up in her face, and them both coming to verbal blows against each other. Seeing Ethan Peck's very sort of at first stoic Spock, but then getting that much more aggressive as his temper is starting to mount and everything, and still having that level of emotion on the surface, which is something we saw back in the original series. There were certain episodes in the original series where Nimoy's portrayal of Spock had very much a hard time dealing with that at times. I remember one particular episode, he throws his dinner, plum meat broth or whatever it is, as brought to him by Nurse Chapel, out of his quarter doors, out into the hallway, and gaining the attention of everyone. So, it's not completely out of character for Spock. This is once again a Spock precursor to that by at least 9 or 10 years. So, but it's interesting, all of these elements that come together, and going back to this vision, the idea that whoever this Red Angel is, it's pointedly, trying to bring about the redirection of this ill fate for all of the galaxy, and it seems to all hinge on Michael Burnham's existence in one way, shape, or form. Of course, that whole interchange between Stamets and Spock, where Spock's trying to, put it into Stamets' mind why there is that divide between he and Culber, and how it's more about Culber needing time to, understand himself and come to grips with the changes he's gone through and all that kind of stuff. And then Stamets, of course, suggesting that, well, have you really taken the time to ask the question, why me specifically? Why this specific Vulcan, this half human, half Vulcan, being that Spock is? Why me? Why out of everyone it could have gone to? If it needed a purely logical mind, it could have gone to any other Vulcan in existence. What is it about you specifically? And well, he's the only half human, half Vulcan who happens to be the half brother of Michael Burnham, who is so integral to this entire thing. That's what it is. And so there was just so much that I loved about this episode, and had me intrigued and on the edge of my seat. Not, again, as I say, having any real concept of what was going to be happening other than Ariam's inevitable, turning her ugly head and revealing herself to be the saboteur. And I had no idea that they would sacrifice the character, that this would be her, untimely demise as a result of all of this. And again, as I say, I think the major thing that I went into it with was this preoccupation, this tentative idea, like, I hope it doesn't fall flat. I hope it is still as engrossing and picking up with the same level of intrigue and excitement and all that kind of stuff that, the previous episode did. The past couple of episodes leading us, what led us to Talos 4, the Talos 4 episode. That was the previous, if memory serves. And then this one, I just feel like so compelled by this story, and really, it's rocking my world to want to figure it out and figure out, which of our speculations and things that we've conversed about in the comments and everything like that, which things are going to play true, which are going to prove false, and where exactly it's all going to go in the end. And I think, unfortunately, I'm kind of, I've gotten to the point where I'm highly expecting the Red Angel to be Burnham, to effectively kind of Sam Beckett, Quantum Leap-esque, going back along events in her, personal history, as well as slightly beyond that, to manipulate the past for the betterment of the future. I hope it's not the case. I hope the Red Angel is something or someone else, but I would be very much surprised if it was anyone else at this point, because they've already said it flat out. I mean, she is the most focused upon character. They've already said it flat out that she is integral to all of these events. Whatever this force, this control AI or whatever it was that was controlling Ariam, it put into her mind, one way or the other, kill Burnham. Burnham must be excised from this if we're to succeed. What are they to succeed at? The destruction and eradication of all sentient life in the galaxy. And with that, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what your, particular take on it is. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, as long as you are respectable and sharing your opinion and respectful of others. All that good stuff. But I just think at this point, it's an inevitability. I would be surprised if it was anyone else that proved to be the Red Angel other than Michael Burnham at this point. For better or worse, And if you happen to enjoy this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, please have a look at my PayPal support link in both the description as well as the comments below. It affords you opportunities very much akin to Patreon, where you can set up a monthly contribution, a one-time only kind of thing, send me a personal message alongside a contribution of any size to request topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, and make recommendations of things I may check out and shout you out down the line if I happen to talk about. And anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me and secure my longevity on YouTube for the foreseeable future, and I would just really appreciate you taking the time. So otherwise, a lot of stuff up in the air. I can't wait to see where we go next in the next episode, and until that time, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Live long and prosper.